Well, hello there. It
Hi,
is
good morning.
so exciting to see you.
Hi, good morning.
Oh my God, it's been amazing to be working with you and helping you share with the world the amazing work that you do. And we
Thank
are so
you.
blessed over here at WMS Press to just play a small part in your process and your accomplishments. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is so awesome. I know you're very busy today, but I wanted to take a few minutes and really talk about what you have accomplished, the things that you have done. So, welcome. I am the president and founder of WMS Press, and it is my pleasure and privilege to have been working with Robyn on her amazing, amazing book that she has written. After years and years of experience, she decided to take the time and write. Not everything, because she really the expert on integrity and compliance, but a lot of what she knows about compliance, integrity, and how it plays a major part in everything that we do. So welcome, Dr. Robyn Joppy. How are you?
Thank you again. I am fantastic, overwhelmed with joy, excited about this day, the launch of the book. It truly has been a labor of love, and I'm just excited to be able to get it out to everyone today. Just putting it out there. It's just been an amazing journey. Thank you.
Right. You are welcome. It's so good to be able to celebrate with you. The Bible says that celebrate with those that celebrate. So we are rejoicing with you
Thank you.
today
Thank
because
you.
it's not a small feat to share what you know, because fear comes up. There's so much questions that come up, but I know that there are going to be many rewards because of this step of obedience that you have taken. So tell us a little bit. Obviously, I know a lot about it because we got to help you push it out. But tell us a little bit about Integrity Matters, Be Your Word. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, as you initially said, the book is a result of my spending many years working in the compliance and integrity industry. I've had the opportunity to work in corporate America. I've worked in nonprofit human services organizations. I've participated in my role in working in finance areas in my church. And then as a result of me starting my own consulting firm, began consulting with faith-based organizations and working with entrepreneurs as a result of consulting, as well as solopreneurs. So looking at all aspects and all industries that I've been blessed, I would say, and had the opportunity to be able to have some type of, I would say, positive impact in helping these organizations and individuals become compliant. I've seen a lot. I've helped a lot, and I saw the positive side of things as well as the negative side of things when organizations or individuals are out of compliance. And I believe that it was God directed that I began to journal and write so that I could talk about this. And my sole purpose was to be able to help people and help organizations be compliant. So that's why the book.
Wow. Wow. And it's a beautiful book. We're going to be sharing a picture of it towards the end of our conversation. But I love the fact how you mentioned the different areas that need a compliance program or plan, because I also come from corporate America, and I always thought that only large corporations needed to worry about compliance. I thought, hey, if you are not in corporate, you are off the hook. You don't have to worry about that. But in reading your book, I realized how mistaken I was and how many people feel the same way. So why do you think that there's that myth that only people with large corporations need to worry about compliance?
I think, as human beings, we have a tendency to think the larger you are, the larger your name, the more exposure you have, the more vulnerable you are. And so certainly spotlight should be on the larger organizations. And that's just simply not true, because I don't care what walk of life you're in. I don't care what industry you're in. We all have to abide by somebody's laws and regulations, whether or not you're a small proprietor or whether or not you're a large organization. You still have laws to comply with. And so it doesn't matter the size. It matters what you do, what industry you're in, and what regulations and laws you're obligated to comply with. And I think it's important to remember that we're talking about compliance, which goes hand in hand with integrity, and the importance of integrity and what happens when an organization, be it corporate organization, nonprofit organization, solopreneur, it doesn't matter. But what happens when there's questions about your integrity? That can do major damage to reputation, to products and services, and ultimately, it can have major harmful impacts on your business. So it's important that everyone understands, regardless of the size, it's all about the laws, it's all about regulations that you're required to comply with.
Wow. Yeah, that's so powerful. I love how you said that. And when we talk about integrity and what being vulnerable, and we have seen examples on social media, a lot of examples in the news as well, of companies that have been out of integrity or dealt with things that they were not even, they didn't have any policies in place.
Right.
And one of the examples that you share is what happened to the airline industry, and how some people violently got removed from airplanes, but there was no policy. So being in compliance or having a compliance program that is robust probably would have had something in place to help them navigate that process, right?
Exactly, because I think, using the example of the airline industry, and, not to stereotype all airlines, because everyone is different, and we have international airlines or domestic airlines, but as a result of the incidents that you made reference to, and certainly I made reference to in the book, clearly the conversation on every major front, I'm talking about the media, suggested that there were no policies or guidelines. Flight attendants didn't know how to handle the situation. So certainly, if there's policies and procedures in place, it would have helped a lot. But it's one thing to have policies and procedures, but it's another thing to make sure that employees are educated on the policies and procedures so that they know how to apply them.
That is big. So what happens, let's say that they did not have policies in place or procedures, and now that happened. What is the process if you know of, okay, that happened, that's not excuse. How do they move forward with that so it doesn't happen again?
Well, certainly calling in their experts. I'm sure their legal counsel was involved. If they have compliance officer, they probably came to the table, or they hired external consultants to come in, and it was a meeting of the minds with senior leadership to discuss the issues, what happened, what should have happened, and what should happen going forward. What can they do to eliminate those problems and mitigate those risks and those problems? So I'm sure that's probably what happened.
Probably. So you mentioned, I know that you're not in corporate America anymore. You have your own firm, which is so awesome. But when you were in corporate America, you were a compliance officer. So for people that are not familiar with that, what does a compliance officer do?
Well, first, let's just talk about what is compliance. Still some people don't know, or for those who are still working in corporate, it's like, oh my gosh, whenever compliance officer would come around, some people would get really nervous because they, look at you as the law in the organization. But compliance is just merely, another word for compliance is ethics and integrity. And it's just monitoring and providing oversight and making sure that the organization is complying with all rules and regulations that govern its business. That's what compliance is. The compliance officer, you can say, is the face of compliance, but the compliance officer's role and responsibility is to mainly make sure that the organization is complying with the laws and rules that, regulate the business and govern the business. Compliance officer generally works very closely with corporate counsel. If there's internal counsel within the organization, they work with them. If some organizations don't have internal, counsel on staff, they partner with external law firms, so that compliance officer works very closely with counsel in all situations. pretty much that's it in a nutshell. I can go on and on for hours about the role of a compliance officer, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like they're an overseer, making sure that every party is aware of what's going on, and being the go-to person when something happens. So yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times I found even through my personal experience and speaking with other compliance officers, my colleagues in the industry, if you will, the perception is the compliance officer is responsible for everything. So imagine the organization, all the pieces of the puzzle that makes the organization whole and helps the organization to go about doing its daily business. And people thinking that the compliance officer is responsible for everything, that's too big a burden. Everyone is essential. Everyone plays an essential role in compliance, from the president of an organization on down. It doesn't matter. Every person's role is vital. And that compliance officer's role is merely to make sure that as a whole, the organization is adhering to, again, laws and regulations and even internal policies, codes of conduct, procedures that govern its business.
Wow, that makes sense. That's really powerful. And I love it. I remember reading that in the book, that you believe that everybody is plays an intricate part in the process of compliance. So I think that is another reason why I believe your book is so powerful, because even though the person watching this or hearing this may not be in compliance, they need to know about it, because they are expected to participate, to make it even better, to make it successful. That's powerful.
Right, because think about it. Every organization has or should have policies, procedures, standards that tell employees what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely. That is powerful. And I love how, when you talked about in the book, again, this is really for everybody, how you have such a wide range of experience. Like, you have worked with so many organizations, and that has given you a lot of insight as to how those organizations can benefit from having someone like you come in and help them. So let's talk about one big one that we have seen, and I just saw it again today, the other day, in the news, is churches and faith-based organizations in spending. And it's a lot of misconceptions about, we're not going to get into what they should be spending their money on, but whenever something comes out to light, like, hey, they're going to buy a jet, or they're spending money on a big house or something, people get all upset and open arms about it. Talk a little bit about compliance in churches and faith-based organizations.
Wow, that's a really loaded topic, depending on what side of the fence you're on. You have those individuals who think that, churches are there just to serve the public, and they really shouldn't have any money. They help the poor. They shouldn't have any, retention or savings, if you will. And that's just, in my opinion, that's simply not true. Whatever way you want to go and whatever your thoughts and beliefs are, in terms of the monies that faith-based organizations bring in, and how they generate income, is totally up to them, their mission, their vision, their values, right? So at any rate, they are handling finances, they're handling money. Some organizations have businesses, for-profit businesses as part of the church. So even the way the organization, the church, is structured is important. So I think some of the issues that we've read about and some of the things that we've heard, there hasn't been any accountability, in the church, meaning no one knew where the money was going, how the money was spent. If I'm a member of a church and I'm bringing my tithes and my offerings to the church, or on the envelope, sometimes you can check off where you want your money to go. What happens if my money is not going where I designate? We call it designated funds. So there has to be some type of accountability for how contributions are handled, how taxes are done, whether or not the pastor or whatever the title is of the person, determining on the type of organization. We could be talking about a mosque. We talk about temple, if it's, Jewish faith. But in some situations, the leaders of the organization, of the church, of the faith-based organization may have housing expenses, or they may have a car. How is that accounted for? Maybe the pastor and his wife, the church wants to send them on vacation. Where's that money coming from? So these are all of the issues and concerns that come up. As you mentioned, we've seen certain ministries and leaders of ministries show a private jet, and ask the members to pay for it, or even the public, because it's on television, ask them to send donations to help pay for it. And as we know, there are some people who see that and was like, oh my God, that is outrageous. That is just totally wrong. And others look at it as a way, if the church is really involved in missions, and that pastor is traveling all around the world doing ministry and helping people. And, a lot of churches do work overseas and underserved and unrepresented countries. So they take supplies, or they go and they minister and provide services and care. So it's one thing to have this agenda where you're going to different countries and fly commercial, with layovers and flying in coach and, all these hours traveling internationally, versus having a private jet where you can just go and do the work that they feel God has called them to do. So I think it's a perception issue. People just have to make a decision, and I think they've made a decision on how they feel about it. But as far as the church is concerned, I think their responsibility is accountability, and making sure that they are accounting for the finances in the appropriate manner. If you're in the United States, of course, you have to comply with Internal Revenue Services regulations and laws, and there's other things that they have to be concerned about. But in a nutshell, that's it. That's my 2 cents.
I love it. Yeah, and it's about having those conversations. And I love that that's what it seems compliance does. It opens up the line of communications and then says, let's put something in place. So when there's a question, when there's an issue, we don't have to panic. You talked a lot about that when somebody comes and questions what you're doing. And that's why churches or faith-based organizations need to run almost like a business. I think you made a case for that. And some people think that's the wrong thing to do. But if we're going to do everything that we do, right? How we do everything is how we do anything. So if we are going to be doing the best that we can, and we have systems in place, how does that deter from what we have been called to do? I think it even helps in the process.
Right. I mean, there are some churches that I know personally that have, they have property, they have real estate, they have land, and they lease that land out to other events that are in the area need to have parking. They lease their spaces out, right? Their property out. There are some churches that have schools. There are other churches and faith-based, it's a hard word to say, faith-based organizations that have senior citizen, living on their property. They've erected these beautiful homes, apartment complexes, and townhouses for their members and senior citizens to live in. And that's a business. That is a business. So I think, and I tried to bring this out in the book, it's important to have internal audits going on to make sure that the people who are handling finances understand the business, understand laws, understand how the organization works, how money comes in, how it's allocated, what the internal processes and procedures are. A lot of churches now, they're growing. We have these mega churches and they have staff. Yes. Some are paid and some are volunteer staff. And even in that, making sure that the right people, there's a match between experience and roles and responsibilities, right? So when there's issues in the church, how's that handled? Believe it or not, HR has come to the church. Human resources have come to the church and come into faith-based organizations, right? So making sure that the right policies and procedures are set up, even in the church, making sure that those who are responsible for handling finances and counting the money on Sundays or whenever offering is taken up or whenever people are, making donations and contributions, that's being accounted for properly. Who's responsible? Is it one person responsible for counting the money, or do you have criteria that says two people need to count it and then the third person and their sign off on it? And where does that money go? Does it go directly to the bank and, an overnight deposit, or do you have a safe in your church that it has to go into? And how many people take it to the bank? I mean, there's so many things that go on right now that as these churches begin to expand or become more business-like with a lot of the initiatives and activities that are now occurring within these organizations, just being more accountable, being more transparent, because we've seen some of these watchdog organizations go after some of these huge televangelists and some of these, big faith-based organizations where there had to be audits. So you just want to be prepared. I always like to tell, I don't care what organization I'm working with, what industry I'm in, I truly stand on the fact that I think transparency is everything. You should never have anything to hide. It all goes back to ethics and integrity.
That's so powerful. And I love how you really broke down in the book. That chapter is so powerful. I love that you're sharing that chapter with people, whether they buy a book or not, about how to get prepared for an audit, because churches do get audited and they should be audited internally on a regular basis, especially if you are accepting tithes and donations. There were some things that I read in there that I was not aware of, and I'm sure there are many churches that are not aware of having all those procedures and policies in place ahead of time, instead of having to scramble on the other side when somebody does ask, because it's not a matter if somebody will ask, it's a matter of when they will ask.
Exactly. And I could have gone on and on and on. At some point I'm like, I got to cut this off because I have so much, and I've seen a lot, and I just want these organizations to be okay, to be in compliance and be proactive as opposed to reactive. The overall goal of compliance in any situation should be to either minimize and or eliminate risk. And that's what you want to do. You want to just eliminate risk and problems. So I just want them to be okay.
That is so awesome. And I love the fact that you have worked closely with those organizations. So, I'm sure you have been able to see ones that do it really well and others are not doing it so well, and be able to incorporate from either one. But I'm very thankful for your experience and for dropping down all that knowledge. I mean, it was like step by step. And I love that the fact that they don't have to get overwhelmed. I love that even churches, even people of faith, get to work with an experienced compliance professional. So when did you realize, did you always know, or when did you realize that not only corporate needed compliance?
That's an interesting question. First of all, let me just say, I grew up in the church. It was a requirement in my home, parents. So as I grew in my faith and grew in years and all that, we were also taught that you should work in the church, so I always had a position. And it seemed like as I grew in life and became an adult and just served in different capacities in the church, it always seemed like I always ended up dealing with the finances, right? And helping with the books and just all of that stuff, And I saw a lot. And I'm the type of mind, anybody who knows me knows I have this analytical mind. I'm a thinker, a thought processor, and think about things a lot, and always looking for ways to simplify processes. And, if something wasn't right, or I felt it wasn't right, always trying to find a way to make it right. So as I began to do consulting and working with, as a matter of fact, working with my late uncle, who passed away in January. But this man, when he passed, he was 79 years old. And I grew up under his leadership. He served as a pastor in many different states, but I would always go visit. And he always would, call, we talk about church and, the structure of the church. And when most men would be retiring, he continued to build. So he ended up going back to Columbia, South Carolina. And some of the people in the community was happy to have him back home because he had been living in Delaware, and then he went to Washington, D.C., and then ultimately he went back home. And they wanted him to start a church.
Wow.
And long story short, he did it. And so he contacted me and he was like, this is probably, one of the most outrageous things I'm going to tell you. And I was like, what's that? I wasn't surprised. And he was like, I'm going to start a church. So he did. Long story short, he did. But I was a part of that process because, it's a new church. So we have charters and we have bylaws, and we got to work with, the local community, because there's things that you got to do. You just can't up and say, I'm going to put a church right here. In some areas, there are establishments where alcohol is served in different states and different counties. There's just different laws. Some say you can't serve alcohol within so many feet of a church. That's going to make a difference. So, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. You just, as I said, you just don't say, I'm going to put up a church here. There's things that you have to consider. So he asked me to help him with the process, and I did. And I'm like, wow, there's so much going on here that should be done that's not been done, because of course I live in another state and I'm doing things from a distance. And there was a committee of people who were helping to, establish this church that just didn't really have the experience. So that was just another example of some of the things that I've learned early on in serving in different capacities. Like I said, working with faith-based organizations where there was no accountability and responsibility. And I'll just say this, I don't think that it was anyone trying to be intentionally bad or, trying to cause harm. They just didn't know, because that's the way things had always been done. Right. So I realized years ago that there had to be accountability and responsibility. And as I began to grow in my career in compliance, you just look at every industry. Let's look at the Catholic Church. And again, I don't want to look like I'm beating up on anyone's faith or religion, but I'm talking about things that have already been in the news with the allegations with the priests and things that have been going on with children, and even in the way that funds were handled within the Catholic Church. Again, if there was some type of compliance, some type of, code of conduct, where people could report things that they knew, that they saw without fear of retaliation, maybe things would have turned out differently. I'm just saying. So as you listen, and if we're listening to the news and reading and just being in touch with what's going on in our world, I think it's just common knowledge that there's compliance is necessary in every industry.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I love how you mentioned that when he was setting up the organization, that there were so many steps to take. And I love how in the book you talk about mergers and acquisitions. And many times business owners, we are very passionate. We just like to jump and do things. But when you're in business, you really have to cross your I's, dot your I's and cross your T's. And it's funny how you talk about, wait, before you do things, you have to look at different things, do your due diligence, do the research, and find out what the requirements are. And then you talked a lot about looking at different places. You're looking at national, international, and different counties. So looking at the whole picture, because it's not, yes, we are in the US, but this book is going to go all over the world, right? So and people, many companies do businesses all over the world as well. So talk a little bit about when somebody is about to start a business or is going to do a merge or an acquisition, how important it is to do that due diligence and look at every aspect from the national, international, and global sense.
Sure, and that's such a powerful point that organizations and individuals who are thinking about expanding and doing business internationally, or even across the United States in different states, it's so important to exercise due diligence, because if you're in one state within the United States and you're looking to expand to other states, it's important to know that every state has different laws, could have different laws and regulations as it applies to one's industry, right? So it's not just the state laws, but there's also federal laws and guidelines. And then sometimes even in different counties or regions, if you will, within a particular state, things are different. There may be certain certifications that you have to apply for every year. There may be a tax law in one county within a state that doesn't apply in another county. It's just really strange. It would be beautiful if everything was consistent across all states, right? But that's not the case. So internationally, same thing. If you're looking to expand your business overseas, it's a whole nother dilemma, because you're looking at cultural differences. You're looking at legal requirements and differences. The laws that apply in the United States don't apply on an international level. So it's very important that you do your research, that you engage an attorney who is very familiar with the laws and the industry in the country that you're interested in expanding in. And it's also important to get a compliance consultant who's experienced and has in-depth knowledge of exercising due diligence, doing the research, and helping to set up your business in another country. So having a team of experts I can't say enough about that, and the importance and relevance of making sure that that happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it all makes sense, and it's so needed. And I love the fact that not only did you put everything organized so beautifully, but you also make yourself available. It's one of my favorite things that, yeah, you're sharing with us, because I'm a business owner too. And I was taking notes. I'm reading that. I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Or I need to look into this. That it can be overwhelming to think about, okay, I just read this book. I loved it. It showed me a whole bunch of places that I need to make changes or look into. And I know that you mentioned quite a few stories of people that tried to do it by yourself and how it worked out. So talk to us a little bit about what is it that you do, like as a consultant, because now you're not working for one company, you're working for several as you're a consultant, how you help people in those different organizations and how they can engage you. And I love how you use that word, engage.
Yes, well, of course, my contact information is out there. It's certainly in the book. It's on my website, www.oneacordconsultingfirm.com. So certainly I can be reached through the website or through the links in the book. But as far as what I do to help organizations, a compliance officer or compliance professional or consultant, if you will, because I still look at myself, depending on the role that I play in an organization when they engage me. Sometimes I'm hired as interim compliance officer, and I've been engaged to do that as a consultant. So depending on my role, I do many things. I do internal audits. I look at billing. Depending on the organization, I might look at the billing. If they're submitting claims to a provider, an insurance company, I may look to make sure that all the necessary documentation or the necessary processes were completed before they billed, or, looking to make sure that they're in compliance with what that funder, what that payer has recommended. Sometimes I'm asked to come in and do education and training to leadership on ethics and integrity. Sometimes I'm asked to do coaching and mentoring with leadership. And I'm not going to spend this time getting into the difference between coaching and mentoring, but they are two different things. So sometimes I'm a coach and sometimes I'm a mentor in the compliance arena. Sometimes I am a certified trained investigator. So sometimes I'm asked to come in and conduct an internal investigation. So I'm able to do that. There are times when I help HR work with human resources in hiring, when they're looking to hire compliance professionals and staff. They ask me to be on the team to select someone for the organization or for a position. So I do many things. I do audits, I do investigations, I do education and training, myriad of things, help write policies and procedures for organizations.
Wow. So I love that wherever people are in the process, I love that they don't have to wait until they're big to be able to engage or bring in someone like you to help them look at what their operation looks like and for you to make recommendations, because you have seen so many businesses and organizations that you have the training, of course, to help them say, okay, based on what you're doing, these are my recommendations. And I love the fact that you can also help them with the implementation process, which is so awesome. So not only are you writing about the subject, encouraging them to get up to date, but also don't get overwhelmed. I'm here to help. And I love the one final question. I love the part where you say that it doesn't matter the size of your company, that you can really come in and consult with the businesses from mom and pops, one person, or a large corporation. So talk to me about people that are starting a business, or they're not as big as they know they're going to be, and the importance of setting everything up well from the beginning.
I think foundation is everything. If your foundation is solid and you can build on it, it's sustainable. But if you start out and you really don't know what the requirements are that applies to your industry and into your business, you start going along, you're conducting business, and one day you realize, oh my goodness, it could be, the Fed's coming and saying you didn't do this, or there's a search warrant, or, there's been allegations made about your business. And that's when you find out, oh my gosh, I didn't know. So I think it's important to make sure that you don't get into those negative situations or potentially negative situations, that you exercise due diligence up front. It doesn't matter if you're just a one-person operation. You still have business, you still have clients, you still have customers, you're still providing a service. And you want to make sure, I think it's very important, that you communicate with your clients and with your constituents that, they can trust what you say, or that there's integrity in your business, integrity in your products and services, and that they can feel confident and comfortable with you and with your products and with your services. So it's important to take the necessary steps before you launch to ensure and to assure that everything is the way it should be, regulatory wise, legal wise, and just from an integrity and moral standpoint.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. I love, love, love the book. I love how it's easy to follow. I can hear the book as you were speaking. I love how you took the time to, because it can be complicated, and you took the time to make it simple to understand. Anybody can pick it up and read it, understand it. There are, of course, the numbers for those that like to know the statistics and the big words and all of that, but you broke it down in such a way that someone that is very familiar with compliance will understand, but someone that comes in completely new to the field can understand as well. So I want to congratulate you again on the book.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you, your company, for helping to birth this book out. It definitely was a labor of love. So I'm excited. I'm excited, and just want to thank you for your assistance with the whole printing and publishing and, just getting this baby out. You just mentioned something where compliance is huge. A lot of times it can be intimidating for people. A lot of organizations, or I should say people, think that it's not for me. That's too much, because we have a lot of legal leads. There's a lot of legal language when you talk about laws and regulations, and can definitely, put people off. And I would just say I try really hard to make it understandable, to make it enjoyable, to make it fun. Like I say, compliance can be sexy, so try to make it sexy. How do you do that? That's a challenge. Enlightening, engaging, And I hope that I accomplished that. I think I did. So we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely do, because I did not know anything about compliance, and I was able to read it and understand it and appreciate it, because even when I worked in corporate America, I realized I was part of the team that dealt with due diligence, and I was never trained. Can you believe that? I was never trained on the importance of what I was doing. I did a great job. I was asking for the documents, but I never asked the analyst that was going to look at the information. I was never really taught on, why are you asking for this? Why are you putting this together? Why are you saying this to the privacy department to look at?
Sure,
And
sure.
I think that happens in a lot of organizations, that they hire people to do something, but they're not properly trained on the importance of what they're doing. And
That's
I believe that that's what your book is doing, is really making people aware of the importance of training, transparency, a great foundation, and understanding the importance of it all when it's put together.
Yes, absolutely.
Powerful stuff. Thank you. I know that you have a lot to do. Today is the new, you're a brand new author, and the book is doing so well. It's
Thank you.
trending on Amazon. So listen, if you heard something today that made you go, or made you think of, you know what, I have some things in place, but I don't know if I have the right things in place. At a minimum, pick up the book today and read it. It is a page turner. It's easy to read. You can go and find the sections that pertain to you. If you have a faith-based organization, that chapter is gold. It will go through everything. If you are looking to expand, if you are a brand new business, listen, she covered everything. And at the end, then you can also talk to her and say, okay, Robyn, we want you to come in because we need some help.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. We will share the link of the video of the book. Is on Amazon. You can look for Integrity Matters. Be Your Word. You'll be able to find it right away. But in the meantime, be on the lookout for all the things that Dr. Robyn is doing, and the amazing doors that we believe are going to be open because of this book.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you.
You're very welcome. God bless you. Thank you, guys. We'll see you another time when we're talking to one of our authors. Have an amazing day.
Bye.